morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, respective radio stations island-wide and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach and welcome to the current National State of Affairs press conference for today, Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, Grisha Heliga-Martin, to address you. Minister Heliga-Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika, and good morning to the media. Good morning, listening and viewing online. Good morning, people of St. Martin. Today makes it 19 days since this government was sworn in. Let that sink in for a few seconds. 19 days. During the first 2 weeks as minister, we all underwent a rigorous, and I kept mentioning it over and over, a rigorous onboarding orientation program filled with training, presentations, and introductory meetings. During the onboarding, I found it prudent to go personally to meet with the staff of each of my department under TIAT. I still didn't have time to meet all who I still understand is still awaiting to meet with me very shortly, but I will be there. You will also recall that in my inaugural address, after taking office, I disclosed that I will be carrying out a quick scan of the Ministry of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Traffic, and Telecommunication to give the people the actual state of affairs of the ministry and provide a factual picture of where our economy is at this moment. To be frank, it took me just 3 days to find the deep mess in which the previous government has thrown us. And obviously, they knew this. They were afraid of the results of the quick scan. That is why, in my view, they became more desperate and obsessively worked to derail this coalition. Something they did not want the people of St. Martin to know. Something they were afraid that would be brought to light and all their lies will be exposed. Let me share with you just a few things I was able to discover in just 19 days in this office. I said the marketplace and the beautification of town will receive my undivided attention. I first met with a construction company that was awarded the bid and later visited the vendors. Their complaints were many regarding the dissatisfaction with the plans and the previous administration made for the reconstruction of the facility, and that was evident. Digging into the files, we found a lot of discrepancies with the entire procedure. I found out that there was a design and build contract awarded without a design and build public tender. I'm going to repeat it so everyone can clearly hear what I just said. I found out that there was a design and build contract awarded without a design and build public tender. This means that other interested contractors were not given a fair chance to bid for the project because, simply put, the one that designed it was the one that won the bid. But there's more. The cruise line that was in partnership with this project requested that they have to see and approve the final project and agree to the payment plan before they even disburse the money. To date, the harbor is yet to hear from the cruise line about the payment of disbursement of $350,000. People of St. Martin understand that this total allotted budget is $686,900.42. The $350,000 is still not in the coffers to be dispersed. And there are still much discrepancies with this that I'm still currently looking into. In the last days, April 18th to be exact, of the previous administration, a six-month agreement was approved to the tunes of 255,000 guilders for the Phillipsburg Come Alive program without proper bidding procedures. As I read and the legal advice, they asked to redo the procurement. And I'll leave that at that there too, because there's more we need to uncover there as well. Similarly, the popular bus and taxi licenses were issued right, left, and center without following proper procedures. The complaint file is stacked full of charges that licenses was issued by avoiding the normal approval process. This too has my utmost attention. On my visit to the various departments under TIAT, the complaints I heard over and over again were the lack of equipment, and several of those that were available were not working, were not in good working proper conditions. The civil servants were not being compensated fairly. Those are the standard things I heard in my visits. In addition, there were several unpaid bills to third parties, which were micro and small businesses right here in St. Martin, the very ones that the previous government claimed to be working for. If you are to follow the development around us, you will see that within all this chaos that's going on internally, American Airlines has increased its flights to Anguilla. That means simply we are losing a significant component of the hub function. The reconstruction of the Princess Juliana International Airport is still nowhere near completion. Can you tell me why the date keep often moving? Because we just heard again that it moved from late third quarter to early fourth quarter of this year. It just keeps moving. Even the cruise sector is not doing so well as it's sometimes portrayed to be doing. St. Kitts and Antigua are giving us stiff competition, and we have done practically nothing in the 4 years to step up our game. We have an FCCA conference in October, hosted right here in St. Martin, which will attract international investors, which I ask myself, what are they thinking about us, about St. Martin? Would they still want to invest in our economy? At the end of the day, does the sabotagers even care? In a brief meeting with the tourist office, which later continued with my cabinet staff meeting with the marketing and project divisions, it was clear to me that our island is haphazardly being promoted. The funds are being fleeced, and this too has my utmost attention. We need to use the little we have efficiently, effectively, and most importantly, it needs to be used responsibly. And that is another thing I saw in my quick scans that's not being done. This, ladies and gentlemen, is probably the tip of the iceberg. I say that because to date, we work towards building our economy back. And we're still burdened with working on getting the necessary tools to get the job done. And I'm back to the civil servant. I implore you, St. Martin, to ask any civil servant that works in this main administration building, or even several of them, those that are working in rental offices. And you will be told the stories of inoperable restrooms, kitchens, lack of basic sanitary products and office supplies, lack of, they also ask yourself, what is expected of our government? What is expected of we expect this government to run efficiently, but how are we to allow our civil servants to work in these conditions? They have been neglected for the last 4 years. We are painting a picture of doom and gloom because, fortunately for this country, this government is in touch with your reality, St. Martin. We're in touch with it. That's why we paint your doom and gloom. That, in short, is a snippet of the state of affairs that I met when I took office 19 days ago. Just in short, more to come. That is the reality of the former government that they did not want to come to light. And that is why this coalition is broken. Interestingly, these were the same people who said they would give us stability for 4.5 years, that they gave us stability for 4.5 years, and they couldn't wait 4 weeks to destabilize this coalition. You cannot brag about stability and work day and night to sabotage the government. And let me quickly address the vote of non-confidence in my person as Minister of TIAT. Simple decency, fairness, and parliamentary decorum requires that when you table a motion of non-confidence in a minister, you would at least invite that minister in Parliament. I have only been in office 17 days when the then opposition, tabled a motion of no confidence in me. I was never invited to Parliament to answer any questions, never had the opportunity to even present my vision and plans to Parliament. The same people who promised a honeymoon period of 100 days could hardly wait 100 hours before destabilizing the government. The same coalition partner that said he vowed to remain steadfast with the coalition aided in destabilizing this government. This is politics, you say? This is dishonesty, I say. That is saying that one thing, you're saying one thing and doing exactly the opposite. That is trampling on the people's trust. And if you cannot keep your own word, how should the people trust you? But I guess birds of a feather flip-flop together. And as always, the people will have the last say, and they are watching. And regarding the issue of why we did not make sure that the 2 incoming members of Parliament were vetted before we resigned, I think some people conveniently forget the oath that was taken when they became MPs. They also forget conveniently that Parliament consists of 15 members. That's in our Constitution. If I remained an MP to vet the credentials of an incoming MP, then that would mean that I would be illegally increasing the numbers of MPs. Vetting the credentials of incoming MPs is a routine matter embedded in our Constitution. It is not a political issue. Finally, I can only say that I will continue to work on behalf of the people of St. Martin, as I promised I would. The quick scan will continue, and I will indeed keep the St. Martin people abreast with my findings, and most importantly, solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Heilige Martin, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, and the Acting Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure, Veronica Johnson-Webster, to address you.
We could ask questions immediately, right?
Minister Johnson-Webster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Good morning to the media. Good morning, St. Martin. State of Affairs of VSR. What I found in the ministry 2 weeks ago was a group of very knowledgeable staff, eager and excited to work. And as such, we had a hands-on workshop session. And I remember that fondly because everyone participated, and you could see that they had not worked in that way. At least they had said it in quite a while. And out of that workshop session, I immediately identified 3 key areas that I would have liked to move forward in, which was mental health, community development, and the general health insurance, fixing our SZV issues. I also found in my queue for decision making over 70 pieces of decisions in the minister's queue and more than 60 in the queue of the cabinet staff. So those were all decisions that were lying there, some even from as early as October 2023. Among those were some very important decisions, such as making it possible for new medical practitioners to practice in St. Martin. There were denials for social services and denials for work permits. They were never handled. Another point is the Mental Health Foundation, which I have discovered has been neglected, and no solution has been sought for the impasse between government, SZV, and the NRPB to make it possible to sign off on the funding for institutional strengthening of mental health on St. Martin, but also for the much needed construction of the new building that is so much deserved. I don't know how much the St. Martin population is aware of, but we keep saying that there are a lot of mental cases on the island. What I have discovered is that there are approximately 4,000 people on our island who are suffering from various levels of mental health issues on the island. That is an alarming number, and it is a cause that we need to do something for as soon as possible if we care about St. Martin. And just the lack of action in that area has been something that has been dear to my heart, and I would have liked to do something about that. Another project which has been stagnant for quite some time and which we receive funding for as well is the emergency shelter project. There was funding for 2 emergency shelters. However, due to the fact that nothing was done, the increasing cost of construction, we had to reduce 2 emergency shelters to now where it's just enough funding for 1. And even there, you see where a lack of just getting a building permit from a ministry that is your colleague, and a transfer of land to facilitate the construction, that has been what has been holding it back. I have seen where government has submitted a padded budget for 2024, which now results in VEASA being asked to slash the 2024 budget by 4 million guilders to make it more realistic. I think that those are things that we should look at. And together with members of my cabinet, I was able to have marathon sessions with SZV last week, Monday, from 7:30 to 2 p.m. And then the PM and the Minister of Finance also met with SZV. And later, I met again with SZV on Saturday from 9 until 12:45. During these sessions, we learned a lot again. Some matters that were revealed show that there are unsolved issues there, and SZV speaks about even putting it in their slide that there's a lot of discussion but no action. And of course, we being action-oriented, we have put up to 4 work groups in place to deal with the pending issues. Issues such as over 100 million guilders, which government owes SZV. Government hasn't been paying the insurance for its civil servants at SZV. It's called the OZR, and SZV indicated again that there are constant discussions, but nothing was being proposed. In accordance with the SZV ordinance, the VSR minister must sign a performance agreement with the director of SZV. This was also not handled for 2024, and it is normally handled before the start of the year. Other large projects for which we get funding have also been stagnated because of issues which could have been solved through communication amongst the ministers, and this government has taken it upon ourselves under the leadership of PM Marcelina to have more close consultation among the ministers and their staff and the ministry itself. Regarding my vote of non-confidence, for me it is confirmation that I have been working hard and that I seem to have been a threat to the current majority, as there was absolutely no reason given. I've asked many people who have listened to the meeting, because I was in another meeting at the time. I've asked many people what was the reason given, and I have not heard any reason given, and therefore I consider it a threat, and that I am a threat. And yeah, that for me shows that I have been working. I have been working for the people. I have been on the ground from the beginning. As the minister before me indicated, we have been bogged down in sessions, onboarding sessions. Despite those sessions, to avoid not being able to govern and not being able to meet the ministries and to find out the issues, I started work at 7:30 nearly every day and finished way past 7:30 because I made a promise to the people that I would come to work. I will now continue with the state of affairs of VROMI, if I may. Concerning VROMI, a further update will be given this week concerning the alarming state of affairs that the ministry was found in. We came into VROMI and immediately encountered a system that had been put in place to keep the actual departments out of the loop when it comes to receiving requests from the public. The lack of a Secretary General and multiple department heads, a virtually empty staff bureau with employee satisfaction being at an all-time low, were also several obstacles pinpointed by VROMI Chief of Staff, Rayon Peterson. I will elaborate on that. VROMI, in my opinion, is completely without leadership. There is no Secretary General, not even an acting Secretary General. There is no controller. The acting controller is sick and preparing to leave on vacation during this budget period. There's no head of permits, no head of domain. But here, the VROM policy head was just signed after quite some time pending, and the head of new works is out on medical leave. So imagine coming into a ministry like that and having to speak to the staff. Document until this week when the former cabinet made a transition document which underscores the fact that it was not the departments doing the work, but the cabinet that was leading VROMI, which is not a good development when you look at operations. Deadlines for establishment of the 2025 budget to all ministries was not met by VROMI. No multi-annual budget was submitted. And again, government, due to the padded budget that was submitted, VROMI is now being asked to slash the 2024 budget by 2 million guilders to make it more realistic. Large funding projects are in jeopardy, such as the wastewater connection project, for which, not surprisingly, there is no focal point in the ministry. So the funding agency has no focal point, because I have no focal point hardly. So there is no focal point, or there had not been a focal point, and because no SG, no acting SG, and the communication with the ministry on project level has been delayed. And most concerning of all, we all talk about housing and social housing. That's what we want for our people. And this government was really adamant about making this happen. However, we received the news yesterday that the 20 million that was good to go, that was ready, that which is funding via the trust fund from the World Bank, that it's a no-go because it has been indicated that the project will not finish on time. Now, we have decided that we will fight this. We will still try our best to convince the World Bank that we are ready, that we can do the last things that are necessary. However, with the current political situation, I'm not sure what we will get through it, but we intend to still, for Country St. Martin, do our utmost to secure the funding for those houses. We do not want to send back any money that we can secure. I thank you all.
Thank you, Minister Johnson Webster, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Finance, Marinka Gums, to address you. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relaika. Fellow ministers, civil servants, members of the press, and to the people of St. Martin, good morning and blessed day to all. Today, I stand before you to deliver a state of affairs, having now been officially in office for 2 weeks and 4 days. As the Minister of Finance, I approach this role with the utmost seriousness. This ministry is essential in ensuring that all other ministries are held accountable and or in line for their decisions and actions. Initially, I aspired to be the voice of reason, the minister who would bring hope and articulate the vision of this coalition. It is important for me to reiterate the statement made by former Minister of Finance, Mr. Richard Gibson, that everyone will have to bite the bullet, roll up their sleeves, and tighten their belts with budget cuts. And that statement carries through and is echoed today. In spite of knowing this, I wanted to reassure you, the people of St. Martin, that this government, led by our Prime Minister, along with my colleague ministers, is dedicated to the well-being and progress of you, the people of St. Martin. The financial management process is not up to par, resulting in inefficiencies in government operations and leading to extra expenses, truthfully, sometimes even unnecessary. Despite the picture painted of the 90 million guilders being allocated for investments, or as it was stated, the previous government left a robust coffer, the truth is, these funds cannot be used for key operational items needed to place the government in a solid financial position, covering monthly obligations and long outstanding debts. In 2023, St. Martin budgeted 90 million guilders in investments. To this end, St. Martin attracted a capital loan of 61 million guilders. Partly due to the late adoption of the 2023 budget, St. Martin did not have the 61 million guilders until November 2023. I want to highlight the dedicated civil servants who, despite working with so little and under challenging conditions, are performing miracles. It must be emphatically stated that every hour, minute, every second that this government cannot carry out its tasks hampers on the overall progress for St. Martin and its people. It's important to mention the tax administration is still facing major challenges. There is little insight into increasing the tax compliance. There are long-term staff shortages. There is a great need for training and education for staff, and equipment and ICT systems are outdated. Due to recent developments in the political arena, progress as we know it has stalled. The expectation now is that these same civil servants will need to perform by having to adjust the 2024 budget and diligently preparing the 2025 budget to meet the deadlines of September and secure approval by December 15th, 2024. As we know, the timely adoption of the budget has been a persistent problem for St. Martin. Therefore, it is important that St. Martin does everything in its power to come up with a well-substantiated adopted budget for 2025 in a timely manner. This is and should always be high priority. As Minister of Finance, I must address the current state of the 2024 budget, which became law as per May 14, 2024. It is anticipated that the advice from the CFT will reveal an overstatement of revenues by 22 million guilders. This revelation not only poses a challenge to the current fiscal year, but also delays the preparation of the 2025 budget. Our civil servants within all ministries will now be faced with addressing budget cuts across the board, such as the Winair shares and the tourist tax, which are currently unrealistic to achieve, given the progress of these initiatives. For instance, the inclusion of tourist tax revenue in the budget was premature for 2024 budget as well as the budget for 2023, as the necessary legislation had not yet been enacted. As Minister of Finance, it is crucial to address a significant matter affecting our dedicated civil servants. While it may be challenging to accept, the truth must prevail. A promise of 2% indexation and an additional 1% in vacation allowance once made should be honored. However, the reality is that the necessary legislation has not yet been amended. Rest assured, this government is committed to doing everything within its power, given the current circumstances, to fulfill these promises. I believe it's imperative to express my gratitude to the members of the RISE team for their invaluable contribution to the onboarding process. Their efforts have provided crucial insights into the governance of St. Martin, enriching our understanding and facilitating our work as we strive to serve the best interests of St. Martin and its people. I will continue to apprise the population of these and other matters that are of critical importance to our country and cannot be delayed. However, I am concerned that recent political developments may cause delays and hinder decision-making on these issues, ultimately to the detriment of the country. The challenges for St. Martin are huge. Particular attention should be paid to financial management, health and social security reforms, investments, and taxation. This isn't about assigning blame to the previous government or highlighting what this government inherited. It's about confronting the harsh reality, painting an unfiltered picture of the facts, which, frankly speaking, are grim. Thank you for your time and attention. May God bless you, continue to bless the people of St. Martin as we look forward to better days ahead. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luc Marcelina, to address you. Prime Minister Marcelina, you have the floor.
Thank you. Dear present person of the media, and of course, the people of St. Martin, good morning. As you could have heard from my ministers, from our new short-lived government, Cabinet Marcelina I, we have actually encountered a bankrupt country at this particular moment. A surprisingly reality that has not been given to us by the former government. Their focus was to impress us with a duration of governance of 4 years, while actually what we got for that 4 year back was a mismanaged, bankrupt country at the end of the day. But we can continue looking backward and think that we are destroyed, or we can recatch ourselves and try to execute what the people of St. Martin has mandated us to do. And that's why, by making use of this opportunity to confront you with a harsher reality of actually a demotivating situation of our country, I just want to go through a few items and topics and projects and plans that I went through in the last 18 days, only 18 days being in government, just to give you an impression about our drive to try to put this country back on track. First of all, yourself. It has been in the past a big challenge to acknowledge freedom of speech and freedom of journalism. And what we have done is we have had an open meeting with the press in which we had, to my feeling, a very healthy discussion about how to move forward in a young country as St. Martin with the transfer of information from government to the society. I think we were together very successful. We discussed also our media policy that we have, that has been implemented by the former government. We had to pick that policy up because that was the reality of the country. And now we are in a phase that we gave you also the opportunity to have an input for further reviewing of this policy for us to get to a more balanced working relationship for, at the end of the day, to inform our people in a correct way. Another worry I have is heritage for my country. What is still over for St. Martin? Or are we going with the mentality that everything in St. Martin is for sale? I have had a meeting with the COM, with the Sun Resort that represents Mullet Bay, and as you can have read in the newspaper, it stated that they are planning to sell this Mullet Bay. As Prime Minister of this country, I feel that we should have, as a government, as country St. Martin, as people of this nation, the first option to buy this Mullet Bay. And I do believe, and I have some formulas in the back of my head, to work it out, to see if we can execute this buying or taking over of this Mullet Bay in case it comes to that decision. I would like the people of St. Martin to know that a lot have been for sale in St. Martin, but this government now is thinking on the next generation of our people, and we do believe that not everything in St. Martin should be for sale, and that we have to start working seriously on our own nation. I have had also a meeting with the Council of Ministers with the NRPB. They have their challenges too. We are now at the verge of losing the opportunity to use a remaining 200 million that still is in the trust fund for Country St. Martin. And there is a chance that we can lose this 200 million instead of having it available to spend in projects to prosper our people. And that's why there is a mission now to Washington, and people will think that we are now in a phase of a dimensionaire government, and that this Dr. Marcelino will travel to Washington. Actually, it was not in my planning to travel to Washington, but there is no other choice to go to the headquarters in D.C., Washington, to try to convince the authorities of the World Bank for us to get a second chance to make use of actually the $200 million that is still actually allocated for projects in St. Martin that we have the tendency to lose if we don't get enough convincing of the Dutch government and the government of St. Martin for us to be able to use that money. I had already a contact with State Secretary Van Heuvelen, and I requested her to do her part for us, for St. Martin, not to lose these $200 million. I focused with the NRPB on plans, as you could have listened to my speech on the 3rd of May. When we were sworn in, I told the populace of St. Martin that I'm focusing on mental health and social housing and affordable housing, and also on the way forward with financing of healthcare. We are now quite far in our discussions with the NRPB that we're going to get money for allocation to work on improvement of mental health care for the people of St. Martin. As we have heard, we are trying still, although there are some pessimism on the side from my Minister of Romy, we are still trying, and that's why I'm going with this mission to Washington, to try to reconvince the people of St. Martin that there are approximately 4,000 families on a waiting list for housing in this country, and we are going to try to convince them to allocate us enough money for us to really start delivering for the people of St. Martin and see if we can start working on social housing for those in need. I had also an encounter with the second chamber. They were here in St. Martin, and I begged them for us to work on 3 topics. First of all, the democratic deficit, that is a handicap for us to get complete recognition in our relationship in the kingdom. Secondly, I asked them, please, for us to start working on a kingdom based on differences and not a kingdom based on similarities. Traditionally, we have tried to get it going, the relationship between the Netherlands and St. Martin, by accentuating the wish for uniformity in the way to look towards problems in our society. And I told them the only way for us to be successful is for us to acknowledge that we are different people with a different culture and with a different history. And I asked them for us to start working on a colorful working relationship based on differences instead of similarities. We had also an encounter with the SZV, very scary, because I said also in my speech on the 3rd of May that we are, if we continue the way we are spending money of the SZV, we are going to be bankrupting this institution concerning the sustainability of financing of healthcare for Country St. Martin. We are working in a way to create a sustainable financial system to guarantee continuity of care for Country St. Martin. The way we are doing it is we are looking at what should we do with the premiums by considering not to overkill the people that are already in big need in our society. See how we can broaden the base of contributors to premiums. See how we can reduce costs in healthcare, and see how I can ultimately realize the dream that I have to start with a professional treasury registry instead of the big registration that is hampering a sound evolution of healthcare professionals for Country St. Martin. I had also with the Council of Ministers a very learnful session with the Council of State. What we have here is a Council of Advice. In the Netherlands is the Council of States. And what I realize is that there is a lot of goodwill from the Council of State to hold our hands together for us to get the best out of the relationship between St. Martin and the Netherlands. I'm also working with Amsterdam. There is a plan for a slavery museum for Amsterdam called the National Slavery Museum. And a delegation was here, and I told them I do not want a national slavery museum in the Netherlands. I want a kingdom slavery museum for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. They have the opportunity out of a financial fund of 250 million euros, and I'm going to try to see how we can get a piece out of this 250 million to see if we can start with the development of more culture and history awareness in our country, and see if we can start also in a satellite concept with the Netherlands to develop this slavery museum and see how actually we can become like a franchise-like way of presenting the concept of awareness of slavery in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. What I introduced also, and that is a handicap for each government, is every new coalition, political party that comes in has a vision and idea, what we call the governing accord, that is actually translated in a governing program. But to get from an accord to a program, you have to know what are the ongoing projects that are already being executed in the ministries. So to translate a governing accord to a governing program, you cannot do it by day one, excluding the civil servants that are daily working on plans, projects, and vision for the country. So I decided I'm going to do it different. I'm going to come with my governing accord. We're going to create a platform in which the minister, the secretary general, the chief of staff, and the financial controller are going to sit together and ask the government, show me now your vision for your country, and let's dig into the details of your program and see what our input can be for together we be able to execute the governing program for Country Sint Maarten. I realize the approach that I have with my government is quite not a customary to the civil servants, because now they're getting instruction, guidelines, and especially inclusion. And I do believe the only way to be successful in an organization is to make workers, participants, co-owner of the project and include them in everything what you're doing as a government. And I feel in the 18 days that we have been here in government that this new sentiment is being appreciated by the civil servants. In 19 days, I'm standing here telling you a lot. Instead of criticizing, I'm telling you what I'm doing to build back this country. For not yesterday, we are surprised by a development in Parliament that a member of Parliament has retracted his support from this government. Out of my heart, I'm informing you that this has been a surprise for all coalition partners forming this government. You cannot, in 18 days in government, have a total impression and feeling about the functioning of a government that comes in and encounters a ravage and a bankrupt status of a country. For in 18 days to make the conclusion that you feel yourself uncomfortable with people that are working day and night the past 18 days to make this country a great country again. Because I am aware, realizing the reaction of the people of this country, how they have reacted on what has transpired yesterday, I'm convinced that by the upcoming elections, the people will have a firm standpoint about what they want for the future of their country. And to do that, I have invoked yesterday Article 59 of the Constitution of Country Sint Maarten, and I have sent Article 59 in a decree to the governor for ratification for us to be able to dissolve Parliament, for us to be able to organize a snap election as soon as possible for Country St. Martin. It was a difficult decision and challenge for the Prime Minister to do that, but I do believe the situation that the people of St. Martin are in now, the suffering and the challenges of the people of this country, there is no other option to show politicians with the formula of actually functioning by putting self above country, leave egoism control them, greediness control them. That is the moment that I am handing over a tool to the people of this country for them to decide what they will do with those politicians the moment they are going to mandate them in the nearby future when we organize this snap election. We have, of course, deliberation and contact already with the governor, and of course with the Central Voting Bureau already, because this Dr. Messalina is not joking with his commitment for the people of this country. So it's not alone that I invoked Article 59, but with that I dissolved Parliament, and I'm already working with the governor and the Central Voting Bureau to come to an agreement on the specific date to call a new election. We have some challenges because it's a short notice. We have to take into consideration the date for registration of political parties. We have to respect that in our democracy. We have to consider the date for the postulation and the day after the nomination, of course. We have to determine the day of election and, of course, the time span between election, installment of a new parliament, and dissolving the former parliament. These are details that the way we are working, we are going to be able to solve at a short notice for us to proceed with a snap election for Country St. Martin. I reiterate, the people of St. Martin are aware that the move that took place yesterday has not been motivated by the bigger picture of putting country above self, not being motivated by the drive to improve and prosper the livelihood of the people of St. Martin. And that is the reason that I'm handing over this tool of giving the populace of St. Martin the opportunity to show the people of St. Martin that we are serious people and we have a vision and a mission for this country. And with that, I would like to thank you for the opportunity for me to be able to communicate with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister Messalina, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the current National State of Affairs press conference for today, Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. We now move over to the question and answer session, and I would like to re-invite the Minister of TIAT, the Honorable Grisha Heiliger Martin, to receive questions from the media. The floor is open, and Emily of Island 92 Radio, you have the floor.
Okay, so I wasn't sure what format we were going in, so let me go back. So in your quick scan. So let me think how to formulate this. So perhaps a broader question. It seems clear. The Prime Minister's mentioned that you've sent a decree to the governor to dissolve Parliament. Parliament, as yet, has not voted to dismiss the Council of Ministers. Therefore, you are not a demissionaire government yet. It may be within a few hours, but as of this moment, you're not a demissionaire government. Therefore, the government can still make decisions, let's say, charting a new course. Once you become a demissionaire government, it's sort of standard business, just keeping the country running. So in your quick scan, you've mentioned a number of items about projects going forward without a proper tender process being done. So my broader question would be, will the Council of Ministers make a decision to bust the pot? Everybody in the past, they've sort of threatened to bust the pot, make everything open. For example, VROMI, why not call for an independent financial and operational audit of GB? Everybody is up to here with GB. Make a decision as Council of Ministers to call for an independent audit, financial and operational, of GB. For TIAT, you've highlighted a number of points which seem to be of concern. These seem to be concerns. Would you then submit them to the Integrity Chamber, for example? Make a decision will you, as Council of Ministers, as Minister of TIAT, make a decision to investigate these and act on those investigations prior to your term leaving office?
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your question. Indeed, yes, I stated in my closing statement that the quick scan will continue. The issue I have right now is that I too have to cut my budget by $1 million for this budget. So we would have to really see financially how we go about doing the quick scan and which company we use to do this quick scan. But of course, indeed, I said it will continue, and if I have to be open to the public and transparent to the public, I will come back and give a deep dive, a broader information of what it entails. And if it has to seek legal action, then so let it be. But the people need to know why this is happening, and it's a lot going on internally. I don't want to use this forum to go into that information right now, but indeed, it is important, it is imperative that the people find out exactly where we are. Yes.
Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Yes, very good morning, Prime Minister and ministers present. Minister Heiliger Martin, you listed quite a number of what you refer to as discrepancies that you've uncovered in your 2 weeks and 4 days in office. My question is, are any of the discrepancies that you discovered, are any of them considered illegal? And how do you plan to address, if any of them were illegal, how do you plan to address them? Will a report perhaps be made to the prosecutor's office to look into these? So I'd like to know how you plan to address these discrepancies that you found and whether any are considered illegal.
Overall, most of them that I find internally are processes that was not followed properly. There are some, maybe 1 or 2 potential fraudulent processes. I am still in the early deliberations of that, and based on the outcome, I will make my decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Heiliger Martin. Are there any further questions for Minister?
Yeah, so perhaps a follow-up.
Yes.
You've mentioned, if I understood correctly, that contract was awarded for the design build of the marketplace.
The contract was awarded for the build. The term of reference was to build. But the same company that designed, which was the only company to design, was the company that was afforded the project. Other companies bid on what was already designed by one company. The exact same company that designed it was the company that won. And therein lies the discrepancy.
So, as I understand the processes, contracts of that nature, certainly over a certain dollar value, needs to go to the governor's office to be signed off on, in which case part of the process in the governor's office is to make sure that processes were adhered to.
Correct.
Did this go through that process?
What the governor saw was the term of reference and the contract, but I have other paperwork that shows otherwise. So I can see who designed it. The governor is not privy to that. So the governor will not see that information.
Okay.
You understand?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank
Privy to it, sorry.
Thank you,
Any other
Mr. Lee.
questions?
Judy Fitzpatrick.
So I have a question, and I'll be asking this question to each and every of the ministers that are present here today. I know that sometime in the past, when there was a similar situation where the article was invoked and election had to be called, it was indicated at that time that election would be, because typically it's supposed to be in 3 months, but at that time, I believe it was 2019, it was supposed to have been in 6 months, and the sitting government at that time had to step down, and the new government went in for the 6 months. So my question is, if there is a situation where election would be called in 6 months instead of 3, and you are asked to give up your positions, would you do that? And Minister Heiliger Martin, just one clarification on your answer. What are some of the discrepancies that you found that can be considered fraudulent?
So indeed, I will do the honorable thing and make my position available to answer your question. And secondly, as I mentioned earlier, the request for the bid was to bid on the building. In the beginning, it was to design and build. That part is left out, so the governor is not able to see that part. So the person that designed it is the person that won it, and it's not fair to the others that bid. There is some discrepancies in the way that process was done, and there's a lot of other discrepancies like this that I've seen with other projects within the TIAD ministry.
Thank you, Minister
So she
Heiliger.
has a follow-up question.
May I?
Go ahead.
Yes?
Yes. So I also wanted to ask, do you plan to return to Parliament if you do have to give up your
Of
position?
course, I made mention of that if I have to, most definitely, not only return to Parliament, but of course to the people of St. Martin to clarify everything, for sure. But my intention is not to stop this project, because I've been an advocate of it from day one to have it to begin. My main point going in was mainly to find an opportunity to make the design, to make changes to the design to suit the marketers, the market vendors' needs. That's all. But in doing that, I found these discrepancies. Yeah? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Heiliger Martin. I would now like to re-invite the Minister of VSA and VROMI, Minister Johnson Webster. Mr. Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I will reiterate the question to you specifically about GB. First of all, Tuesdays are Council of Ministers days, so I understand that you have a Council of Ministers meeting today, and as of yet have not received notice that you're demissionaire. Would you consider to call for an independent audit of GB, operational and financial, in order to bring that transparency that everybody's looking for in terms of what's going on with GB? For example, if GB is having problems providing sufficient electricity for the infrastructure as is, with so many new projects coming in, is GB's capacity in place to meet that? I think there are a lot of questions that the public would like to have answered that would feel better if it came from an independent investigation. Would you be willing to do that?
Well, having from the beginning when we started, I think the Council of Ministers discussed having independent audits of various government-owned entities, and further than that, together with the party that I represent in VROMI, we had discussions where we looked at we need to do a deeper dive and find out exactly what's going on in GB. And we have only scratched the surface where we went to visit with the Prime Minister, seeing how important GB is to us, for the community to solve that. We went down there to find out, but we have not had the time to go back and have the real sit-down meeting. And the director, the current interim director, is also traveling right now. So having said all of that, regarding audit, I have had informal discussions with up to 2 companies who are willing and able to do such an audit, but we want to do things the right way. So we will have to have terms of reference written and proposals sent out to come back in. So saying that, to do it now fast, I mean, there is a threat of a motion against me, it could be in minutes. You don't know when it can happen. So if you're saying if I'm going to be able to do it before we become the missionaire, I am not sure if I'm going to be able to do that. Was I intending to do it? Yes. And with urgency? Yes. But in 2 weeks, there's not much that you can do when we said that we had onboarding as well, you know? So it is top of mind, top of what we wanted to do. It is there, but the time is just short now.
If I may clarify.
Yes, you may.
However, I think the Council of Ministers could make an in-principle decision that they will follow that path, in which case, once you become demissionaire, you are simply executing a path that was laid out. So you don't
Indeed.
need to have all of the details and bidding documents worked out. You can make an in-principle decision that for government-owned companies, you want to have an independent audit done. And I think that would be a good
Indeed.
legacy for the short term that your cabinet's been in office.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Any further questions for Minister Johnson Webster?
Yes, I just have one question, Minister. You indicated in your presentation that two of the things that you would have liked to work on as it was a priority was fixing SZV and focus on mental health. I just wanted to know if you could give me a quick synopsis of how you plan to do that, particularly mental health.
Okay, I had mentioned three though. The third one was community development. So when you look at SZV, as I mentioned, SZV indicated to us that there are so many issues that they have now that are always in a discussion. So in the past 4 years with the former government, these are things that are in discussion, such as the outstanding to government and the solution for the outstanding. There was none. There's nobody sitting around the table, and then when there was some kind of a discussion, it was not signed or it was not put on paper, and then it's just not there anymore. So SZV needs care. So we need to, as a government, and what we did was we established at least 4 work groups last Saturday where we need to tackle the OZR, which is the money owed for civil servants, healthcare. We need to reduce referrals. How can we reduce the cost of referrals, which SZV is already working hard on by shifting where they are sending people to other places, things like that. So we need to work together with them to lower the cost of healthcare and still provide the healthcare that we want for our people, but we have to establish what kind of healthcare we want to and can give, and then together with SZV, and this is how we're going to pay for it. And then pay for it, and not say we're going to pay for all of this and then don't budget enough to pay for it. So that's SZV in a nutshell, what we want to do. When it comes to mental health, as I mentioned, there is funding available. There's funding available, $4 million for a building, but there is also funding for structuring processes and everything that has to do with mental health. And that is directed at our public health department to strengthen how we deal with mental health and how we understand mental health and policies, etc. So there's quite some funds available. And although that project is good to go, we cannot because of the outstandings to SZV that are already there. And when you establish new care, you need to establish that you can pay for that new care. So those are the things that are being held back. And then little things like permits and that have to be in place. So that's what I want to do in mental health. And when you look at community development, that department is really moving in the ministry, and they are doing a lot of projects. And I just wanted to help them to highlight their projects and to get the people involved, get the people out to to the events. I think there's one upcoming now. There was one with sewing classes, and there is one upcoming now with self-defense for women. There are different empowerment projects in the neighborhoods together with the help desk that our community can be a part of. So those are the three key areas that I wanted to move forward with.
Thank you, Minister Johnson Webster. I would now like to invite our Honorable Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums. First round of questions, Mr. Lee from L92 Radio, you have the floor.
1 second, Mr. Lee. Rolika, allow me to address the question by Ms. Patrick.
Correct.
Yes, I too will make my position available when that time comes. And also, Mr. Lee, you've asked the two previous ministers concerning a quick scan. And I would like to elaborate a little bit on that because I think it's important that the people of St. Martin understand the process behind what we thought we should have done or should do in reference to a quick scan. It was a part of our governing accord. That was a decision that we all agreed to. I took the initiative to contact not one, but two organizations to provide us not only with a quick scan for the Ministry of Finance, but also all ministries. Upon that realization, we had a meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister, who then said, well, you know, if we do across the ministries, perhaps it would be a great idea if they can also include, future tense, the government-owned companies. We have received one quotation so far. And, you know, to be honest, while I understand the importance of it, especially towards the government-owned companies, you mentioned GB, I'm sure the harbor, I'm sure the airport or other parts that you would probably mention as well, or tell them. The truth of the matter is, we have been in an onboarding session now, and that onboarding session has provided so much information as to the current state of affairs for this country. I don't know, and I'm being totally honest, knowing that budget cuts of 22 million across the board is going to be necessary, I don't know if it's sound to still go out and have to pay, at least we have one quote thus far, towards a quick scan. However, if this Council of Ministers believe together that this is still an urgent matter, knowing where we are, then we would have to have that discussion and then come to an understanding concerning the quick scan. But I believe all of the information that we've received thus far already paints that picture.
Okay, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. I guess it's a question of what you would share with the public. I mean, as a minister, you have some information that I understand that's confidential. I understand that some of the government-owned companies also have financiers, and if that information becomes public, it becomes an issue. But so where do you draw the line between transparency and the need for confidentiality? And I think, okay, so ultimately, if this government becomes a demissionaire government, can you continue that quick scan process? Can you continue the hiring of consultants if necessary in order to paint that clear picture so that when people are going to the polls, that they have a better understanding of what the real status is and what was inherited?
Yeah, I believe, like I said, it's a discussion that we would have to have as a Council of Ministers to decide. And I agree, I totally understand your position, your question, but I am looking at the financial situation of the country. And already having all of the information, or at least most of it, that was unfolded during this onboarding process, I kind of believe that that is sufficient. And if information needs to be shared, depending on the confidentiality of it, then we can probably look at that and see how we can go about sharing that information to the public.
I understand. as we enter into what appears to be a new political season,
Yeah.
there's going to be the other side of the statements being made, just like the outgoing government, that the government was left with the robust coffers. So in that is going to be a real confusion for the people,
Correct.
and that's where I think an independent scan
I
audit
totally understand, but
is-
like I mentioned in my statement, that 90 million that was left in terms of the robust coffers that we were talking about is towards investments. It has nothing to do with operations.
So a specific, you mentioned that CFT will probably state that there's an oversight of revenue of 22 million. But that
Correct.
same CFT commented on the previous budget and gave it a thumbs up. So again, this is where I think media and public is confused. What is the true story? So
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I would now like to invite Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. A lot was mentioned about the financial status of the government right now. The Prime Minister mentioned that a bankrupt government was met. You mentioned that a lot of the 90 million cannot be accessed for operational expenses and pay salaries and so forth. So what I would like to know, what exactly is in government's coffers right now that is funds that can be used? If you can give me a dollar figure as to what we have right now. And would you consider, if you're saying that the 90 million can't be used for anything, then would you consider the financial situation of government critical right now? Because with the calling of elections, that's another expense that is going to be put on government's coffers. And if you can also provide us with a figure as to how much new elections would cost. Thank you so much.
Judy, to be honest with you, like I stated, the 90 million is towards investments. So I really would not at this time want to give an exact figure as to what's in our bank. You don't want to give that that fare to the public. What we do know is that if we continue in the manner in which we are going, which is already dire, and I have stated that in my release. It is a dire situation. It will not leave us in a good financial position. Like I said, CFT will tell us cut 22 million across the board. That is going to happen. And I have already instructed all ministries to go ahead and look into cutting across the board. I have outlined per ministry how much they should cut. It's not even, so that's unfortunate, but that is the reality that we face. We came in on May 3rd, and on May 3rd, you had a situation where the wish lists of the ministries were not yet known, or not correct, I should say. Not all ministries delivered on time, and even if they did, it was incorrect. So I gave an extension until May 30th to have that corrected. And if not, we will definitely have to go back to the 2024 budget, which I already know will have to be cut by 22 million.
If I may follow up, you indicated that you would rather not provide the figures to create fear.
Right.
But if the sentiment is out there from the previous administration that you are receiving a robust coffers and that's not the situation, then wouldn't you like to clarify that?
No, so like the robust coffers is basically towards one end. We have investments, but then you also have creditors. I think one of our ministers mentioned what we owe, for example, to SZV. And let's be clear on the SZV. SZV, we have so many issues there that we encountered. We encountered the OZR. We encountered the maintenance of this very same building that is yet to be established. When I say yet to be established, there is no actual contract in place for the maintenance of this building, that we still have to go back to the drawing board because SZV feels it's one amount, government feels it's an X amount. I cannot give that letter of comfort to the head of SZV that he would have to give on to, for example, SOAB to basically say that government is in agreement with the amount towards the maintenance of this building. And trust me, based on the session that we had with SZV, not only on the Saturday, it is a very clear picture that this very government building is in a precarious state. So I'd rather not give the actual figure at this time, Judy. However, I can definitely follow up with you and the team to outline exactly where things are at, to make it clear concerning the budget of St. Martin 2024 and going forward 2025.
Just one more question, Minister.
Unfortunately, I would like to get to our Prime Minister, and we are
Okay.
strapped for time. Thank you so much, Minister Gums. I would now like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister, Ms. Dr. Luke Marcelino. Mr. Lee, you have the floor.
Good morning. I can imagine the emotional feelings on your side. It must be very, very frustrating, and I sympathize with that.
It's not. And I can tell you why. The people are realizing what they have to do in the upcoming elections. There are no emotions. The status of the country is in a dear state, and that's why I'm giving them this instrument to show the world what is a good decision for the future destiny of this country. There are no emotions. It's a disappointment, but there will be no emotions in this.
Very good. You mentioned that, so I assume that the Council of Ministers has met and voted and agreed with the invoking Article 59.
Yes.
You mentioned that it was sent to the governor.
Yep.
So is the governor in agreement and ready to sign off on that decree?
Yes, the governor is ready. He told me he has no other choice. He understands my position. And now, before signing, we just have to agree on the dates, matching it with the demands of the Constitution for us to stay in the framework of respecting our Constitution, but still seeing that we accommodate all the phases heading towards election. And once we have the date set, it will be okay to sign, because the governor gave me already the consent that he realizes that we have no choice than to move forward with the snap election.
Prime Minister, you indicated that with the decision made to call for snap elections, that you're putting this decision back in the hands of the electorate.
Yes.
But given the fact that we have a, if I may use your own words, a bankrupt administration, don't you think that you are putting the country in a precarious financial situation by calling for snap elections, given that there is a new majority, irrespective of how you see that?
It's choosing between two bad things. If you're talking about a bankrupt country and you're talking about the price tag, I had two choices. Give the country back to a government that has severely depleted the coffers of this country, or pay a price to get back a great government to move forward this country. So the price that I'm going to pay for this election is going to be much less than giving the former government again 4 years to govern this country. That's a decision that I made.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, are there any proposals on the table as to dates? You said, I know you did indicate that that still has to be decided on. And I would also like to ask, you mentioned the issue of Mullet Bay, and you believe that St. Martin should get first preference to purchase Mullet Bay. But we don't have money. So what are your ideas as to how we will buy this if this happens within the period that you're still in office? Thank you.
The Enya, the Mullet Bay is part now. I'm thinking about a good way to do it, not to compromise my plan to execute this for my people. You have to realize one thing that was a condition that I had on the table. You have to realize that something exceptional happened in the rescue approach for this Enya. As a public entity, we moved over to save a private entity. So we as a government does not have any obligation to refinance mismanagement of private institutions. And we did it. We took a risk to do it, and we are going to pay, if I'm not mistaken, $2.3 million per year for the coming 50 years. If you have followed the budget debate, for the coming 50 years, we're going to pay $2.3 million per year as a jest to the Enya not to please Enya, but to make sure that the 3,000 people that have a commitment in their pension plan for them to get continuity of a pension. That's why we did it. So now in my negotiation part on the table, I say if I'm as a public entity is helping you to save your business, now it's time for you to help me to help my people too. Because I didn't have the obligation to help you, but we did it, not because it was Enya, but because we had 3,000 families here depending on a pension payment. And that's why we did it. So we actually committed ourselves for 2.3 million per year for the coming 50 years. You can count that out, how much it will be. If we add 2 million more to it per year, in 50 years, you have already 100 millions. So if I see how I can manage with 2 million more in my budget for the coming 100 years, I will have that Mallet Bay for my kids and my grandchildren. I think it's a compromise that we can close without talking about the price tag of Mallet Bay, but I'm telling you how you have to see it. If I'm going to help Enya 50 years, Enya can help my people 50 years too, right? And then we can come to a payment settlement in that way. For example, if that is the route to solve the problem that we have as a country with an insurance company, I didn't say that we have to buy it, but in case it comes to buying, that is a way to look at it.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Any further questions for the Prime Minister?
One last.
Mr. Lee?
My colleague has asked whether ministers would make their position available, but I think it's important for the public to have a clear expectation.
Yes.
Are you saying that there would be, between now and elections, another government that would take office? Or are you saying that you'd make your positions available for after the elections? So I think it's just good that public expectations are clear.
We're going to send a letter today to the governor in which we hand over the resignation of Cabinet Marcelino. So it's clear, we are going to resign as a government, and that's why I have a COM meeting to get broad support for that letter, and we're going to hand over the resignation of this government.
But there needs to be a government in place.
And that's why he's going to take it in consideration and ask me to continue being responsible until a new government comes in after election.
Okay, just so that expectations are clear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Judy Fitzpatrick with the final question.
Thank you so much. I did ask earlier about a price tag for election. I don't know if you can provide clarity on that. And I also asked whether there are any dates, potential dates floating around, any proposals for...
No, a lot of dates has been mentioned. Actually, it's if you follow the Constitution already, you're very limited in the time span that you have to organize a election. But the problem that you always have is to accommodate all the facets leading to an election. For example, to give new political parties the opportunity to present their list, for example. And sometimes in that aspect, you get yourself in a conflict situation with what the Constitution gives you as space in time to organize an election. And for us to respect our Constitution, we are doing it carefully in negotiation and in deliberation with the governor and also with the Central Voting Bureau. But it's going to be sooner than later, the election of St. Martin. I think if we count, I think it's going to cost us about 500,000 Antillean guilders to organize a election for Country St. Martin. Approximately, standing here, giving you a rough calculation, it's going to cost you 500,000 guilders to organize an election for Country St. Martin. You're welcome.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Members of the media, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the current State of National Affairs press conference for today, Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. For rebroadcast, tune into stmartingov.org, SXM Gov Radio via 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel, Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rolika Roach and wishing you a pleasant day further.